Recently, we talked to MIT professor David Su about ways that cities and towns can hold more sway over their energy systems. One idea he told us about is community choice aggregation. And if you haven't heard of that before, well, neither had I.
Community choice aggregation is a policy by which local governments can sign a power purchase agreement and they can choose where to get their power from.
Traditionally, cities and towns don't get to pick where they buy their electricity. But CCAs are spreading fast, well beyond where the model originated, which actually isn't too far from our campus.
The first community choice aggregation was in Cape Cod.
When Professor Su learned that, he thought, why Cape Cod?
I discovered this retired journalist living in Cape Cod. And I called him up and he said, I'm glad you called. My family wanted to get rid of these boxes in our barn of all these old documents. So I drove out to Cape Cod a bunch of times, looked at his documents.
That journalist, Scott Ridley, helped him rediscover the origin of the CCA.
It turns out that this retired journalist had been involved in anti-nuclear movements in the 70s and 80s. Through that movement, he started to learn about what legal powers cities and towns had. He said to himself, we should come up with legislation to try to enable cities to simply choose where their power comes from, and the utility which owns the wires has to serve that power. He actually goes to the utility and says, we'd like to pass this legislation, we'd like this power. And he says, the utility literally laughed in my face. They said, you're never gonna do this. And so he bands together with a few other activists in Massachusetts. They go to the utility, they get shut out. They go to the legislature doesn't give them time of day. So they start going to Massachusetts town meetings.
Eventually, a whole group of towns banded together to ask the state for this kind of legislation.
That's when legislators start to listen. And these activists basically create the legislation. They help write parts of the legislation.
In 1997, Massachusetts became the first state to allow CCAs. Since then, they've grown to cover millions of Americans from Ohio to California, and are experimenting with everything from new building models to new clean energy technologies to upgrading homes and building electric car chargers.
It's not like every experiment is guaranteed to work out, but I think if we don't open up the capability to experiment, we're not going to get the innovation that we need.